Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And in this episode, I want to look at the true extent of Scotland's shame with human trafficking and brothels with foreign women. Now, 2 days ago, I put out a video where I discussed the 19 recent arrests over the last 24 hours of that video in Scotland between Dundee and Paisley of people taken into custody after human trafficking offences. Two things have happened since. One, I saw a new article today where the total is now 20 in 3 days because there was two women arrested in Dundee, two arrested in Paisley in the previous video, and 17 in Dundee. But there's now been a third woman arrested in Paisley, taking the total to 20 arrests between Dundee and Paisley over the last 72 hours for trafficking of human beings in Scotland. How frightening is that? I was also sent by a friend who works in the legal profession. You obviously seen the video, and he forwarded me a newspaper article from a few months ago where there was people being charged and arrested and the court case had been finalised. And I thought, well, how bad is this? So I started looking into it a bit more, and I found an excellent article in the Holyrood website covering not only the Chinese brothel arrests that my friend had alerted me to, but gave a sort of bigger picture of what actually is going on in Scotland. So I'll reference both in this video. So the first one, I've used the Daily Express as reference for this. Purely, it's the first one that showed up in Google when I typed it in. Telling us about a third woman charged with brothel keeping and serious organised crime in Scottstown. An intelligence-led operation was carried out alongside the Home Office Immigration Enforcement Team, with officers attending addresses in Scotland's largest town on September 26th. The third woman has been charged in a human trafficking and brothel keeping investigation after properties were raided by police in Paisley. So this is a follow-up. There was two women aged 38 and 44 on the original one 2 or 3 days ago, and now there's been a third woman of 37 years of age arrested and charged at Abercorn Street, Paisley, over the same alleged offences. She's due to appear in Paisley Sheriff Court on Thursday, October 24th. The arrest followed an extensive investigation into alleged illicit activity taking place at premises in Abercorn Street area of Paisley. So that's an update on the previous video I've done, and now I want to look at this article in Holyrood.com's website. Got a good article by Kirstine Peterson, and her headline is Human Trafficking, Scotland's Role in a Global Battle Against the Gangs. And this discusses the case that a legal friend had passed on to me just last night. In June, 3 people were sentenced for their part in a human trafficking ring that saw victims forced into prostitution in Scotland's biggest cities. Women, mainly from East Asia, were exploited in flats in Glasgow and Edinburgh to make money for a criminal gang with links across the UK. One of the properties used was just 50 yards from Edinburgh's Royal Mile. Mother of 3, Qin Huang, oversaw daily management of the victims from her suburban Glasgow home, while 34-year-old Xiao Min, based in Surrey, trafficked them across the border. Both admitted offences under Human Trafficking and Exploitation Act between 2018 and 2021, while accomplice Guolei Huang, 35, was convicted of brothel keeping. The High Court in Glasgow heard they were part of a sophisticated and significant criminal network. The prosecution followed Operation Fasthold, a joint endeavour between Police Scotland and the Home Office, and it came after the publication of official statistics that show cases of human trafficking and exploitation in Scotland have reached record levels. Referrals to Police Scotland through the UK-wide national referral mechanism were up 19.5% in the last year. Operated by the Home Office, the NRM identifies potential victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. 184 cases were flagged to officers in Scotland. That's in 1 year. That's 1 every 2 days. More than 1/4 involved Vietnamese nationals, with 13.5% relating to Albanians and 13% to British citizens. So these foreign gangs aren't just bringing people in from across the globe. They're actually trafficking our own citizens. Victims were pushed into forced criminality, labour exploitation and sexual exploitation. But it's accepted that figures revealed just a fraction of what was really happening in communities across the country as police work with international partners to disrupt the cross-border crime gangs responsible for so much misery. Lawyers say too little is done to rehabilitate the survivors subjected to degradation. And while cases like that of Hung, Ming and Hung created temporary headlines, there is no short fix for the problem with global drivers that are turning millions in profits for the gangs involved. There's a bit of misconception about the level of human trafficking that happens in Scotland, said Detective Superintendent Steve Bertram, whose specialist crime division based in the Scottish Crime Campus in Gartcosh, North Lanarkshire, is tackling modern slavery, human trafficking, prostitution and more in collaboration with forces in other jurisdictions across the world. A recent bust disrupted a gang worth £1 million, which was just the money we could see, Bertram says. We look at forced criminality, whether that's forced begging, forced shoplifting, being forced into drug cultivation. Think about poor souls sitting outside shops begging. Do they want to be there? Where's the money going? It's going back to the pockets of organised crime. It's more than begging, shoplifting and cultivation of cannabis. There are fruit picking operations, nail bars, car washes, building sites and even social care firms using fraudulent paperwork and bogus companies to operate in plain sight. Their workers tricked, threatened and controlled by the removal of passports, the allocation of debt that must be worked off and the suggestion that non-compliance will mean violence. Great shame, trouble for those back home or a combination of these consequences. There are some real horror stories out there, Bertram says. When I started in this job, I was explaining it to friends and family. The first thing they're saying is, do you think you're going to be busy there? We are really busy with the resources we have got. I don't have the capacity to take every human trafficking inquiry that comes in. That's frightening. If there's an impression that it's not happening in Scotland, I'd say it very much is. The case of Manacha, I can't really say this, Wanet Thanwet and Cameron Wilson in a case at Point. Wanet Thanawet, 40, trafficked Thai women and forced them into prostitution in Dundee, Aberdeen, Inverness, Edinburgh, Newcastle and elsewhere over a 3-year period from July 2019. Wilson, 30, had been a punter before joining up with Wanet Thanawet to launder the proceeds. Both found guilty at the High Court in Dundee last month. While immigration law is reserved to Westminster, human trafficking has been a specific offence under Scots law since the passage of the Human Trafficking and Exploitation Act in 2015, which increased the maximum punishment for offenders to life imprisonment and strengthened support rights for victims. But Anusha Kulapana, a senior associate at the Scottish Anti-Trafficking and Exploitation Centre run by legal charity Just Right Scotland, says victims still face a painful struggle. The legal definition of trafficking is dense and complex, she says, and many of those freed from trafficking have never heard it before and therefore cannot name what has happened to them. That means individuals can be missed, she says, further skewing statistics and what is really happening on our streets. Some, she adds, are so traumatised that they cannot tell officials what has happened to them. Recovered is a term that we use for people released from trafficking because of the individual. It doesn't feel like a rescue. When there's a raid by police, that's another trauma, another terrifying situation for them. For us, it's that job of showing that we understand that what has happened is something that has happened to other people. There is isolation within the experience. Claims of having been trafficked are often disputed. Kulapana says, and are treated by the Home Office through an immigration lens. This is not about immigration, this is about victim care, this is about serious and organised crime, she says. We are just not getting the full picture. We know lots of people have been trafficked through Calais, through small boats, through lorries that are coming across and through Stranraer from Belfast. We know that. So what is happening? What protection and support are the victims provided? There was a reason why that person was vulnerable in the first place. In their home country, someone says they'll help them or give them some food, so they go with them. Next thing, they're working in a garment factory in Russia, cutting wires in China. They're not allowed out. They are told we kept you safe or you was. Then brought to the UK. We see the same routes time and time again. Dame Angela Eagle, UK Minister for Border Security and Asylum, has said the new Labour government will not stand by as criminal gangs exploit vulnerable people, risking their lives and giving them false hopes of a better life in the UK. Driven by greed, these gangs have no regard for human life or safety, she said, and authorities are taking the fight to them on all fronts. Eagle's comments follow the arrests of more than 30 people across the UK in a joint operation targeting irregular migration in the common travel area. Arrests of suspected immigration offenders were made at Loch Ryan Port, where ferries linked Dumfries and Galloway to Northern Ireland, with others picked up at Liverpool and Luton. Police Scotland was one of the forces involved, alongside the Police Service of Northern Ireland and the National Crime Agency, immigration forces and other partners. It's just endless. And that's not even reading the whole thing, because it goes on. I'll put a link, by the way, in the comments, because it's great. It gives you case studies of some of these people, mainly women, who are, been victims of this stuff. But there was a couple of things I just want to refer back to, and it was where the policeman was talking about, there we go, but what these people who are trafficked do. Obviously there are really serious things like, putting them into the sex industry. But he says, and this bit caught my eye, we looked at forced criminality, whether that's forced begging, forced shoplifting, being forced into drug cultivation. Think about the poor souls sitting outside begging. Do you think they want to be there? I'd never considered this before, that actually these people sent out to beg and shoplift are doing so under duress. And they're no more than being pimped for their actions as someone who would be a sex worker. If they're forced in the streets to beg for money, which then gets taken from them and some pittance no doubt given back to them, or being forced into shoplifting, and obviously I would imagine again given a pittance in return for putting herself in danger of being arrested. And it's actually quite a mental ring that's going on here. And obviously the sexual exploitation is one of the sort of scarier aspects of this. But when you consider all the other types of crime that these people are getting through, and the percentage is 38% are in forced criminality. So that could be a number of things. 36% labour exploitation, and just under 10% sexual exploitation. It is quite harrowing, and I wish the Scottish Police Scotland all the very best in trying to end this. But it just shows you that you hear about these things and you always think they're far afield. If you're living in Scotland like me, they're on your doorstep. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification button. Let me know your views, anything that you know about this type of thing. Please stick that in the comments below. But most important of all, unless you're anybody involved in this type of criminality, everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.